Single father comes home after a long day. What his neighbor said left him speechless. Marcus pulled into the driveway at 7:43 p.m., later than he'd hoped. Again, the drive home had taken 40 minutes longer than usual. A fender bender on Route 9 that turned the whole highway into a parking lot. He sat behind the wheel for a moment after cutting the engine, just breathing. The house was quiet from the outside. Through the living room window he could see the blue flicker of the television. At least Jalen got home okay. That was the first thought he always had. The second was always guilt. Marcus worked double shifts at the distribution warehouse 3 days a week now. Ever since the divorce 18 months ago, the math of their lives had changed completely. 2 incomes became one house became a rental, his daughter Amara's dance, recitals, Jalen's Little League games. He made the ones he could, missed the ones he couldn't, and tried not to let either of the kids see how much that cost him. He climbed out of the truck, still in his work clothes, a red t-shirt now damp at the collar, boots heavy on his feet. The evening was warm for early September, the kind that felt like summer's last gasp before fall arrived for real. The maple tree in the front yard had already started turning at the edges. That's when he noticed her. His neighbor Diana was in her front yard watering the flower beds along the driveway. She had curly brown hair pulled half up, wore a cream sweater despite the warmth, and was turning the garden hose in slow arcs over her dahlias and late-season roses. She glanced up when she heard his truck door close. "Hey, Marcus," she called, giving a small wave. He raised a hand in return, tried to smile. "Hey, Diana." He'd known Diana for about 8 months, since she'd moved in next door with her brother, who Marcus had only seen a handful of times, usually on the porch with a coffee mug. She was friendly, the kind of neighbor who remembered which trash day was which and occasionally left vegetables from her garden on his porch in a paper bag with a little note. "Zucchini, more than I know what to do with. Help yourself." He'd appreciated it, though he'd barely said more than a dozen words to her at a time. Tonight she turned off the hose and walked toward the low fence that separated their driveways. She had an expression he couldn't quite read, not pity, not nosiness. Something more careful than that. "Long one?" she asked. He exhaled. "Yeah." "The kids ate," she said. He stopped walking. "I hope that's okay," she continued quickly, reading his face. "Amara knocked on my door around 5:30. She said you weren't home yet and Jalen was being difficult about the mac and cheese. She seemed, I don't know, a little overwhelmed." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Amara was 11. She shouldn't be managing dinner and a difficult younger brother. "She knocked on your door?" he asked. "She did. And honestly, I had a pot of chicken soup already going. I make a big batch every Sunday, so it wasn't any trouble." They both ate well. Jalen had 2 bowls, a small smile. "He told me it was almost as good as yours." Marcus looked at the ground for a second. He pressed his lips together. He didn't trust his voice for a moment. "Diana," he started. "You don't need to say anything," she said. "Really? No, He stopped, tried again. "I didn't ask you to do that. I wouldn't have asked you to do that." "I know. That's not your responsibility." "Marcus." Her voice was gentle but direct. "I'm your neighbor. They're good kids and they were hungry, that's it. That's the whole story." He nodded slowly, jaw tight. She wasn't finished, though. She glanced toward his house, then back at him, and said the thing that would stay with him for a long time after. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "Amara talks about you like you hung the moon. The whole time they were at my table, she was telling me about this thing you said to her last week. Something about how being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. She said you told her that before her recital." Diana paused. "She's got it memorized, Marcus, word for word." He didn't say anything. "Whatever you think you're getting wrong," she said, "you're getting more right than you know." He stood in his driveway for a moment after she went back inside. The sky was doing that thing it did in September, turning a shade of orange, pink over the rooftops that felt almost unfair in its beauty. He could hear the neighbor's dog barking somewhere down the block. A car passed slowly on the street. He went inside. Amara was on the couch with a book, her feet tucked up under her. She looked up when the door opened, and the relief on her face, the way her shoulders dropped just slightly, cut right through him. "Hey, Dad. Hey, Bug." He dropped his keys on the table, crossed the room, and sat down next to her. He put his arm around her and pulled her into his side. She leaned in without hesitating, the way she used to when she was small. "I heard you handled things tonight. It wasn't a big deal," she said. "It was," he said. "You did good." From upstairs he heard Jalen's bedroom door open and small feet on the stairs. His son appeared at the bottom, 7 years old and wearing pajamas that were slightly too small, his hair still damp from what Marcus guessed was a bath. "Dad's home," Jalen announced like he was delivering important news. "Dad's home," Marcus confirmed. Jalen climbed over the arm of the couch and wedged himself between Marcus and the cushions, elbowing for space with the casual confidence of someone who had never once doubted his welcome. "Diana's soup was good," Jalen reported. "But not as good as yours, so I heard. She puts rosemary in it. I don't like rosemary." Duly noted. Amara was quiet for a moment, then said without looking up from her book, "Are we okay, Dad?" He looked at her, really looked, at the small furrow in her brow, the way she was pretending to read when she wasn't actually reading. "Yeah, Bug," he said, "we're okay. Because sometimes I worry. I know you do." He squeezed her shoulder. "And I'm going to fix some things so you don't have to. That's on me, not you. You shouldn't be worried about dinner. That's my job." She finally looked up. "You work really hard. So do you," he said. "Both of you." He looked at Jalen, who was now examining the ceiling with great interest. "Even this one." "I worked hard today," Jalen confirmed. "I carried my own backpack the whole way from the bus." "Heroic," Marcus said. Amara laughed, a real one, the kind that crinkled her nose, and just like that some of the weight of the evening lifted. Not all of it. It never lifted all the way. But enough. Later, after the kids were in bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and his phone. He had 3 unread texts from his mother, one from his buddy Darnell, and a notification from the school about an upcoming parent-teacher conference. He typed a message to his mother. "Rough day, but we're good. Kids are asleep. Call you tomorrow." Then he sat in the quiet for a while. He thought about what Diana had said. She's got it memorized, Marcus, word for word. He remembered saying it the night before Amara's spring recital, when she'd been so nervous she'd barely eaten dinner. He'd sat on the edge of her bed and told her that courage wasn't the absence of fear, that every brave person he'd ever known was scared, that the fear meant it mattered to her, and that meant she was exactly the right person to be on that stage. He'd said it because it was true. Because he said it to himself, most mornings, before he got out of bed. He hadn't known she'd kept it. He hadn't known it had meant that much. He sat in his kitchen in the quiet of a Tuesday night, a man who was tired in ways that sleep didn't always fix, who was doing his best with incomplete information and not enough hours in the day, and he let himself feel for just a moment that maybe it was adding up to something, that maybe the small things, the words at the edge of a bed, the suppers cobbled together from what was in the pantry, the arms around small shoulders on a couch. Maybe those were the main things after all. He finished his water, rinsed the glass, turned off the kitchen light. He checked on both kids before he went to bed, a habit he'd never broken, maybe never would. Jalen was sprawled diagonally across his mattress, one arm hanging off the edge. Amara was curled on her side, her book closed on the nightstand, her reading light still on. He turned it off softly. She stirred. "Dad?" "Go to sleep, Bug." "Okay," she murmured, already sliding back under. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the rise and fall of her breathing. "You're getting more right than you know." He pulled the door closed gently behind him. Down the hall he could see the faint orange glow of the streetlight through the window at the end of the corridor, and somewhere outside a late cricket was still singing, one of the last ones of summer, hanging on. Marcus went to bed. Tomorrow would be long too, but tonight they were okay, and for tonight that was enough.